Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of PreVeil's Compliance Corner. I'm Orly Burlov, and joining me today is Greg LaRoche. I decided to dump the Batman and Robin routine with my normal colleague, Noel Vestal, because today we're asking Greg to join us and talk about PreVeil versus GCC High. Greg is a great person to have on the show to discuss that because he's been in the world of PreVeil product for over 3 years now and knows the product landscape really well. So to kick off today's discussion, Greg, let's just put it out there on the table that, defense customers, higher education institutions, a lot of different types of groups and organizations have to meet the CMMC Level 2 compliance standard or NIST 800-171 standard, and they are led to believe that GCC High is the only solution that can get them there. That's not true. Why don't you kick this conversation off by kind of giving some perspective on that answer?
Sure, thanks, Orly. And like you said, the most important thing is protecting the controlled unclassified information, or CUI from now on, and protecting that data from our adversaries. And so what does a small or mid-sized company do in the defense industrial base if they have their own unique requirements and additional constraints that make these compliance technologies, a poor fit for them, basically?
Right.
A lot of these small and mid-sized companies, they need a more targeted CUI solution for a portion of their business and not the entire business. And They need to, and they also often lack the resources internally or the budgets, frankly, to migrate their entire infrastructure, leave behind all their commercial IT investments and move everything and everybody onto a new compliant cloud. Not often feasible for some of these companies. So that's why, having alternatives is important, and what we'll talk about today.
Yeah, so I think one of the key things that I often hear you talking about when you discuss PreVeil is its ease of deployment, right? One of the things that makes a product accessible to a whole swath of individuals is that it is easy to deploy, and that's a really important thing that we talk about with PreVeil. How do you describe that?
Yeah, we say PreVeil is easy to deploy, and it is. But why is that? A few main reasons. One is, it drops into an existing IT environment as opposed to moving or migrating or replacing existing things. It kind of drops in and integrates itself into your environment without having to migrate your data or your users or replacing your existing IT investments. So that can often make more sense for a company that has constrained resources or limited time.
Right. So that's all important to know. But if it's only easy to deploy, that doesn't really sell it in Prioria. It has to also be really easy to use, which is, from the user standpoint, easy to deploy is great if you're trying to maximize the ease of deployment. But ease of use is also ease of deployment is also easy from the end user point of view.
Right. So PreVeil is easy to use, and we say that for a few reasons also.
Right.
Mainly it's because the users can keep their existing tools and identifiers that are already familiar to them. Like for example, they can use their existing email address. They don't have to change, how they're identified to their coworkers or peers via email. And they can also use familiar mail clients like Outlook. They can use their existing file explorer to explore files. And so basically, if users can use familiar tools, they don't need training, and they can pick up new capabilities really easy. Like, for example, pop up an Outlook screen, and we can show our audience where the where's the PreVeil mailbox sit, and what might it look like.
Right. So this is my my mailbox, my personal mailbox here at PreVeil. You can see that there's an encrypted inbox, and there's an encrypted message here. And right above it is sitting my regular Outlook and mail and all my messages. And you can see it looks just like my regular Outlook does, no different. Yeah, and so it just integrates seamlessly. As you mentioned, you keep your same email address. So if you're Greg at ABC Aerospace, and your PreVeil email would still be greg@abcaerospace.com. No change of email address. And so let's just talk about the next thing, right? It's important that it's easy to deploy, easy to use, but it has to be affordable and not cause you to have to break the bank in order to bring it in-house. How do you describe that challenge?
Right. We've designed PreVeil from the beginning to be cost effective. And there are a bunch of reasons why we can claim that. One is that the customers can deploy only what they need. So we said earlier that PreVeil drops into an existing environment as opposed to replacing it or migrating it. So you can identify only those users that touch or process CUI and deploy PreVeil just to them. So that'll make your license costs lower. And also our licensing model is very simple. So we don't add a bunch of confusing options, and you don't have to do research to figure out how to buy PreVeil. It's very simple. It's licensed per user. The license comes with everything they need and all the features they would use typically.
Right. And I think another thing that makes it cost effective that we should mention here is, when you deploy PreVeil and use our supporting documentation, you're able to support 84 out of the 110 NIST 800-171 controls. Now, you still have to meet 26 other ones, NIST controls, but with the PreVeil and supporting documentation, you've gotten significantly along the way. And so you don't have to hire a partner to help you with all of the controls. You're only really needing a partner to help you with those remaining 26. And that's another big part of the equation. But that brings us to the next issue, which is, this is all about assessment and being able to pass an assessment by DIBCAC or by a C3 PAO. How does PreVeil's help you there?
Sure. PreVeil makes the CMMC journey a little easier, because as you're preparing as a company, your goal is to get ready for your assessment and have the assessors come in and find your program acceptable, and so you can continue along your business objectives. So because you can deploy on PreVeil as a CUI enclave, you're defining the scope of your CUI protections as narrowly as possible. And that's important because now you're making your security systems easier to document, easier to assess later when it comes time for that C3 PAO to come in, or DIBCAC. Basically, having the documentation we provide, as Orly mentioned, being able to avoid a really complex configuration of all the backend systems that other solutions require, all those things, make getting ready for the assessment more complicated, more difficult. So we make that easy.
I think the way to kind of bring this all home, though, is to talk about it in terms of how it is a great alternative, compliance alternative for SMBs, but also focusing on the whole purpose of this is to protect CUI. Before we jumped on this show, you had a nice way of describing it. I think you should share that with the audience.
Yeah, so with PreVeil, we know that CMMC, we opened up this call to talk about, really CMMC's top objective is to protect the CUI data from our adversaries, right? So if we think about that, we take a lot of pride in how PreVeil was designed and built to provide that high level of data security using end-to-end encryption techniques in a zero trust architecture. And then take all of that power of technology, make it easy to use, easy to deploy, and affordable for small and medium-sized businesses. So that's really an important message as companies are looking for alternatives, because
Right.
there are alternatives outside of GCC High. And in PreVeil's case, we already have seen successful proof in actual assessments of DIB companies and C3 PAOs. So we know that our solution can be deployed and assessed successfully.
Yep. All right. And with that, Greg, thank you for joining me on PreVeil's Compliance Corner today. We'll have to do this again sometime. Thank you so much.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks, Orly.
All right.